Just make sure that music is turned off. But good morning, everyone. It's July the 16th, and it's a threesome of air quality, heat, and wildfire risks today. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going over, thanks Trevor for the like, appreciate that. I'll be going over several different data sets today, this morning, several different outlooks for the rest of the week and into the weekend, and then talk a little bit about what communities are going to be facing as they enter into the recovery mode, especially in Ontario. And considering the amount of air quality issues that are going on across the country, I'm going to be encouraging so many First Nations that they start taking the necessary steps now to secure the proper resources to make sure that when people can return home, whether it's within days, weeks, or months, for some it could be years, that all structures in the community be tested for smoke contamination, just given the air quality readings that we're seeing across the country, especially in Ontario. And that can mean millions and millions of dollars for housing for First Nations. That can mean workplace safety enhancements for across reserves in Canada. Unfortunately, it's during the recovery that the Crown focuses its efforts, and that's where First Nations need to take up a lot of the opportunity to rebuild and restore to a level that was better than before the fire. So I want to start off first of all today by saying thank you to our sponsors. First Nations owned All About Abatement. They are headquartered in Edmonton, Alberta, and they do everything from wildfire smoke testing to all hazardous material testing. They do asbestos, lead, toxic metal, organic liquids, chemical waste removal. They have very mobile equipment that is ready to go into any remote community to deal with whatever kind of hazardous material assessment you might need, including wildfire smoke contamination testing, tape lift testing. They have expert environmental hygienists on staff. So I encourage Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities across the country today to reach out to Kyle and his team at All About Abatement to talk to them about hazardous materials assessment and abatement, because it's going to be high risk coming out of this wildfire season. And then also we're sponsored by Darcy and the team at Premier Fire and Flood. No better opportunity than right now to contact them to support your re-entry and recovery planning in terms of disaster restoration. So they do everything from heavy water extraction to smoke contamination restoration. They have a rapid deployment team. They have a 50-foot trailer staged full of mobile equipment for remote communities. And they do wildfire, they do water, fire, flood mitigation. And they are available right now for First Nations, Inuit, Métis communities that need this capability in community following a wildfire, smoke contamination event, anything of the sort. So give Premier Fire and Flood a call, talk to Darcy and the team. You can head over to their website right now and get their contact info, or send me a comment or a message, and I'll get you in touch with them. You want to secure this resource capacity now, because they only have so much capacity, so much staff, and we want to provide as much work to our Canadian companies before the big corporate entities come out and pull staff and resources from the United States and other areas. So please reach out to All About Abatement if you need a hazardous materials, services, and assessments for wildfire smoke, and Premier Fire and Flood for wildfire, smoke contamination, any kind of needs. So getting on today with special weather statements. Again, it's basically the triad, the threesome that I'm talking about. And you can head over to hazardscape.com and get our full briefing for today. This is what it looks like. It's very Indigenous centric, but you can get it there every day. Just have to log in and grab your copy. So we've got up here in the north, we're going to have air quality warnings all day in so many parts of Canada, and we'll go over the smoke map soon. But conditions have temporarily improved. However, smoke is expected to return in the evening. And these, the reason these maps kind of have borders and things like that is because the sensor data is only in certain areas, and they're in pretty defined areas. So down here, we're going to have heat warnings across much of northern Alberta, southern Northwest Territories. We're going to be hitting 30 to 34 combined with lows of 14 to 16 expected in today. We'll show you how that is going to impact the fire weather index. We have a heat warning down in southern British Columbia. In and around the Calgary area, we have a fog advisory that's going on right now. We have air quality warnings right across eastern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba, and then all over Ontario. Ontario is going to be the highest risk province probably for the day. And then as we move east, we have severe thunderstorm watch just southeast of Montreal. So this is what the special weather advisories are looking like. And if you're noticing the other colors on the map, the sort of the purple is Inuit agreed upon lands. And then we've got the Dene, Klitko, Saulteaux, and we have that's Inuvialuit lands. So, and then we've got Indian Act reserves down in these red spots. So these are not active weather warnings. These red ones are Indian band reserves, with these ones being the heat warning and then the air quality over here. So if we head over to the fire weather index, as forecasted as of right now, you can basically see that it has gotten a little bit better for Saskatchewan, southern Manitoba today, but it still remains high to extreme throughout British Columbia, northern Alberta, northern BC, into Northwest Territories, and Ontario with Atlantic Canada. Those are basically the extreme areas, with the wildfire danger being high to extreme for probably over 75 to 70% of Canada. And that is, we'll go through the temperatures for the day. This will adjust a little bit. This was created as of 2:08 Central Time, but this one, I believe, will get updated as the day goes on. So it's always good to keep an eye on these maps at the Canadian Wildfire Information System website. If you need the links to these sites, you can log into hazardscape.com, head over to the resource library, and you can grab all the links plus more that I'm going over this morning. So we're going to flip over because I know the air quality is, with the wildfire is the big risk. And right now we're kind of sitting in, if we get into the Ontario area, we're sitting at 250 plus at the 2.5 parts per million. And the 2.5 parts per million, that's just a gauge of air particulate at 2.5 micrograms per cubic meter. So this is going to pick up kind of that medium-sized particulate. There's also measurements for 10, which you get into a little bit of the larger, but I think they like to stay at 2.5 because that is going to kind of pick up a lot of that really fine air quality issues. So as we progress, this is a projection for today. We can see right now through the north, everything is kind of concentrated on Nunavut right now, but as the day moves along, we're going to see Ontario basically just sit in wildfire smoke for the majority of the day. Let's go to the daily average outlook. So on average today, this is where we're going to see the smoke congest and sit. Everything's kind of, I think what is maintaining that there is maybe a bit of the jet stream. We'll head over to where we're looking at in terms of high pressure. So we've got a lot of high pressure system, mainly around Yukon, northern BC, Alberta, into Saskatchewan. That's bringing all of that heat. There is a little bit of a low pressure system in the Northwest Territories right now, but for the average today, this is what we can expect in terms of smoke. So basically, Ontario, with all of the fires that they have going on, completely engulfed in it. And then Manitoba, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, even into Labrador. We're going to see a little bit of shifts, but on average, this is what we can expect for today. The daily maximum, if we go over here, let's see if I can pull up the chart here, because we'll run it. I'll pause it at, kind of the time sequences. So here by about 4 o'clock, this is what we can expect in terms of smoke inundation across the country. So right now, in terms of this morning, it's not too bad, but as we get later into the evening, we can expect a little bit more of the country to be engulfed by smoke as the day goes on. And then by the evening, around midnight, we'll get a little reprieve in the west. But as far as we get into this afternoon, a lot of Canada is going to kind of have some light cover, moderate at the 1 to 10, maybe even 28 parts per million, reading at 2.5 micrograms per cubic meter. But then as we get into the overnight, we'll see a bit of reprieve in the west, but much of Ontario, especially southern Ontario, it looks like if we bring down that here, Thunder Bay, Gull Bay, right in the epicenter, Dryden, we're going to see probably the air quality. We could skip over to that right now. Actually, let's just take a quick look at that air quality. Thanks, Gwenny and Trevor, for the likes. If you're still tuning in, appreciate that. Okay, where is it? I don't think this one takes us to, this one is pretty good for air quality readings. I've tested it myself with an air quality sensor, and I get basically the very same readings that this site gets, which I think utilizes a mix of satellite and air quality stations. But here's where you're going to see this part of Ontario in that 192, 190, which is extreme, unhealthy. So as we play this out and we watch kind of where that pink area is going to sit and get worse, right in there, we're hitting a 383. That's crazy. That's hazardous. That's not even unhealthy. That is not good. I don't even know. 459. So these are probably right in the epicenter of where some of those fires are. This is not livable. I would say that if you're in any of the areas where the air quality is getting up into the 300s to 400s, that is beyond unhealthy. That's getting into, you need to get out of that area. You won't be able to survive without personal protective equipment, oxygen. I wouldn't recommend anyone being in, these areas where it's getting into like the 300s at least. Even the high 100s is not good. And then as we get out, we get even into 66, right? Even where this yellow, this 53 is, that is moderate, but you're now getting into like this unhealthy range. So it's really, really poor air quality. I would say that the air quality risk is just as bad as the actual wildfire risk itself. Especially if we're getting into like that 350. That is not good for animals, not good for humans, really bad for elders and senior citizens, and children. Keep your windows closed. If your nation or your community has the capability to bring in air purification systems, I mean, that it's not going to harm anything, but it's also not going to provide too much respite, especially if your home already has a lot of draft, if your house is prone and not totally sealed well, you're going to get smoke contamination levels in your house that definitely need professional restoration and professional cleaning. And when you combine having to be in your home, safeguarding against really hazardous air quality, combined with these hot temperatures, faced with wildfire, that's probably, for me, probably the worst situation to be in. A mix of not being able to breathe well, poor air quality, extreme heat, and then wildfire threat. So, yeah, I just hope that everybody is able to take care. I know governments are responding, but they never respond. They governments don't have the ability to respond quickly. It's up to the local community and the local authority. And I always get kind of nervous when I see communities wanting to reach out for military support, wanting to reach out for, government leadership, but the Crown doesn't have resources for managing wildfire, managing air quality, managing heat. It's got to all be done at the community level. And especially if you're in a remote First Nation, if you're an Inuit community or Métis settlement, and you're faced with the levels of air quality and heat that we're seeing with the threat of fire, it's not, you can't live in that. So if you're in the Ontario area right now, especially anywhere north of Thunder Bay, sort of east of Kenora in the Armstrong, Pickle Lake, Fort Hope area, yeah, your best bet is to definitely evacuate, and you're not going to get great reprieve in terms of air quality in Thunder Bay. I would, think about taking my family, probably, west into the south, given that the wildfire index right now in southern Manitoba is quite low. That's the fine fuel moisture code. But I would just not stay in Ontario personally. If I had the means to kind of head west into some of the major centers, if that's even a viable option for people to get into, Edmonton, Calgary, even, Lloydminster, just because that's, the air quality is going to be better there. The fire risk is lower. There's probably not as many people evacuating to those centers right now, so it's a little bit, maybe not as overwhelming. But that's just for me personally. I know everyone has communities that have plans and they're putting out direction, but your community's priority at this point is to save lives, and it isn't necessarily following that to give you the most relaxing environment. It's not to do any of that. It's just to get you out of your community and safe. So that is up to you. And I would take it upon myself, if it was my family, to evacuate and go to a place that isn't going to be inundated with other evacuees if possible. If I didn't have family or elders or seniors that needed care, I would even, if possible, if they can travel, take them with me. But it's it's a very difficult situation, and you can just see right now El Nino, how it's pushing up the Atlantic. It's going to kind of hang around like this most of the winter. That's the forecast. I want to head over to the Thompson Rivers University Outlook too. This is for July 18th to the 23rd, so we're getting a fresh outlook. This is a photograph of Kamloops. That's pretty crazy. This is a wildfire smoke radar, the drought monitor for June, and then here's where you can kind of, that's the jet stream that I was talking about. So you can see through the middle here how it's kind of flowing across the north and then down through Saskatchewan, Manitoba, below Ontario. Those high pressure systems are sitting in where that dark red is. And even though this is probably, we're going to go back to the temperature, but we're probably going to see some cooler temperatures come into Ontario as that jet stream kind of cuts off Canada in the middle. But let's go over to the temperature out to maybe, let's go out to Tuesday. Yeah, so you see a little bit of temperature reprieve forecasted for Ontario, while much of Alberta, BC is going to kind of stay in that mid to high 20s. But when we talk about temperature reprieve, like, you're still going to be in the 20s. But that's the jet stream that I'm talking about, that's been forecasted for much of the summer. And then you're going to start to see, forecasted lightning density. Basically, this kind of normally happens for BC. BC normally has a later in the summer wildfire risk. They kind of end up being the last province. But I don't know, given Alberta, it's kind of been a very quiet summer in Alberta in terms of wildfire. So I'm just wondering if we're going to see kind of like, we're going to follow BC maybe a little bit and maybe just see an increase and a bit of a later wildfire fighting, go later into the summer than normal for Alberta. I don't know, but that kind of seems to be like what could happen. But I think communities in the West are going to need to stay ready and prepared longer into the fall than normal, even, because that El Nino is going to cause, the heat to stick around in the fall. It could be a very warm winter. There will still be some cold days and things like that. But given how things are shaping up, here we go. Here, this is the other one I wanted to scroll down. So you can kind of see the forecast here. This is what has been forecasted for a couple of months now. This is for August. We're just going to continue to see the warm, dry El Nino air sticking around in the west while the east of Canada cools off a little bit. And then in terms of precipitation, not too much. The green is in that kind of above percentile, but you can see Canada is really just not even registering. So in terms of that. But yeah, just in terms of forecasting, what we're seeing here is pretty conducive to what has been forecasted all along. And then this one here, you can see Thunder Bay is what's in the south. So you'll see that wildfire smoke continuing this trend here for the day. Yeah. So July 16th, kind of where we expect to be. No, it's where we expect to be, but I think again we're going to see Alberta, BC have a little bit later start. And here's the current wildfires going on in the country. So even if you go back about 6 weeks ago, this was a pretty sparse map, other than Manitoba. But the escalation in new fire starts that are out of control, and that are, two, I think greater than 1,000 hectares. It's, I mean, like if we go into these, they're hitting like 3,000. A lot of them now are definitely being monitored in terms of fire resources, keeping an eye on them, but still a lot that aren't monitored. Let's go look at this one here. I want to double check what they mean. Fires with monitored response type are being observed and assessed. The wildfire is burning and is expected to continue growing as out of control. So as there is no suppression action being taken, these fires are considered out of control and declared out for national reporting purposes. So it's good to know kind of what these mean in terms of full response is aggressive initial attack. Modified response, fire personnel use a variety of techniques. Monitored response, wildfire is being observed and analyzed but is not immediately suppressed. So that would be kind of like a lot of the ones that are in this purple color. But yeah, once again, thanks to our sponsors, All About Abatement. If you are looking for smoke contamination testing, wildfire smoke contamination testing, even if you've got structural fires, you definitely need to have community testing done just because of the amount of toxic materials. Give Kyle and his team a call at All About Abatement, along with Darcy and his team at Premier Fire and Flood. They will come in and do the restoration, clean your home, get rid of all of the contamination that exists. If you've got asbestos in your attic, vermiculite, and it's contaminated with smoke, which if you're in any of those areas in Ontario that I showed you, you're definitely going to want your attics tested. All About Abatement has a great system for that. And Premier Fire and Flood can take care of the rest of the home with your soft goods, couches, items like that. Even if you don't have insurance, the federal government provides support for Indigenous communities to deal with that. So if you do want to head over to hazardscape.com and get a copy of our daily situation report, you can do that right now. It gives you a list of all the new startups with a summary of all the communities, evacuations that are going on. We're even tracking some other risks, policy funding announcements. But the main thing is really if your community, whether it's EMAP eligible or DFAA eligible, if you need disaster recovery planning operations, claim support, reach out and give me a shout and let me know the situation, and we can provide that support. Because disaster recovery claims, it's a multi-year process. There's a lot of documentation. There's a lot of policy work. Teams kind of are there to deal with the day-to-day normal operations, but once you get into a big disaster recovery, that is not a normal operation and you need augmented support. All right, that is it for today. If you missed this update and briefing on the current situation across the country, you can watch the recording on our YouTube. It also stays on our Facebook channel, along with a copy that you can get right now at hazardscape.com if you want the download Word copy of our daily situation briefing, evacuation reporting, where things are going on. That's all available at no cost through our sponsorships with All About Abatement, First Nations Hazardous Materials, Smoke Contamination Testing, and Premier Flood and Fire and Flood that does the smoke contamination cleaning for on reserve and off reserve homes and structures, which I always recommend before you go home, especially with the air quality that we're seeing here. If you are in Ontario or anywhere this smoke is in the air quality readings of like 100 plus, get tested. Okay, everyone, we will see you again, and thanks for your time. As always, know your hazardscape and stay prepared.